now. Yeah, hi everyone. Again to this time of the month, we have the Centrifuge Community Call number 25. It's a small jubilee, and yeah, we will see afterwards in the second half of the call why it's a jubilee. But first, we will start with a FAQ session. We have special guests here from our partners from DeFactor. Anna from business development will guide through the FAQ session, and I guess we will get a short presentation from DeFactor as well. After that, the second part of the call, as I already teased a little bit, we will have time to have a small jubilee, because we have Centrifuge Community Call number 25. And that's quite amazing, because when I can remember, one of my first community calls was 1.5 years ago, and it was I don't know, it was the revolving pools, the version 3 of the Tinlake protocol. So a lot happened since then, and Cassidy will give a little bit of a wrap up, of a short overview of what exactly happened. Just a few keywords. Of course, we launched Tinlake pools. Then we reached a special amount of TVL in Tinlake pools. Of course, most recently, Polkadot parachains launched. The Polkadot parachain launched, of course, the Altair parachain on Kusama as well. And a really important part is the RWA market with ARF, the partnership. And we will close the call at the end. Lucas will give a little bit of an outlook, because the past is really important, but the future is yeah, as important as the past, but maybe it's even more important. And what else do we expect in the future? For example, scaling pools is on the agenda. More liquidity in Tinlake pools. Then, of course, the CFG token utility will be increased. And a really important goal is, of course, the growth of the Centrifuge DAO, the governance and the decentralization of the protocol. So this is the agenda. Of course, we have questions when you have questions. So please raise your hand and ask the question directly. Or if you don't want to speak, then you can post your questions in the chat as well. And I would say, without any further ado, we can start with the DeFactor presentation, or the FAQ session.
Yeah. So I am going to moderate this session. It will be around like 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm very happy that Alejandro from DeFactor is here, and also Patty, who's leading the marketing team there. And so what I thought how we structure these 10 minutes is that you first maybe give like an introduction, like who's DeFactor, and tell about yourself, also the journey from ConsolFreight to DeFactor, and then I will dive in and maybe like stop you and then to ask more questions. And also, if anyone else who's listening right now has like a question, be like, okay, I want to ask DeFactor or ConsolFreight as an issuer, just drop it in the chat, and then we'll try to answer it. But first, I'll hand over to Alejandro. Who are you? What is ConsolFreight, and why are you now DeFactor?
Good, thank you, Anna. And let me add, Ernesto is here as well.
Oh yeah, true. He's also there.
He's also here. So for the ones that don't know me, my name is Alejandro Gutierrez. I'm one of the co-founders of ConsolFreight. It's one of the asset originators that is currently working in Tinlake, and one of the co-founders of DeFactor, right? So the interesting, just tell the journey for the people that don't know this journey and how we ended up with DeFactor. With ConsolFreight, we started, I think, 2016, and the idea for us was One, digitizing everything that has to do with the supply chain space and logistics, and understand how we can provide better visibility, traceability using blockchain protocols and systems, right? And that's how we're starting getting closer and closer into all the DeFi space. At some point, we realize that using our knowledge in the supply chain space and supply chain finance, we could potentially create new financial services using real world assets as collateral for that. And the idea was to first assess the risk in a completely different manner. Instead of just checking the people that are going to be involved in the transaction, we're going to just see the whole supply chain as a holistic way and trying to mitigate the risk in every single stage at that chain. And with that, we'll say, well, if we are holding those goods, we're going to be able to provide services to a lot of SMEs out there that they are not feeding at the moment through the traditional system, right? Because as you know, it's a lot of cookie cutting when you are going into this risk assessment framework. And from there, we're starting just knocking on doors, and it was really difficult just present this modeling to the financial or traditional space. And at some point, we met the guys from MakerDAO in a conference in Vienna by just pure chance. And they say, oh, guys, what you're doing is really interesting. Do you want to do a pilot? So, well, fair enough. Bring all that internet magic money, right? Let's go for it. And that's how we ended up actually working with Centrifuge, right? Centrifuge was starting just putting kind of that protocol to help MakerDAO to bring real world assets, right? To provide that collateral that is needed or was needed at that point for them, and that we are running with at the moment. So with that in mind, yeah, ConsoFrey has been, it was one of the first pools ever in Centrifuge. We went from the static pools, we did ConsoFrey 1, 2, and 3, they were fully static, into the fully revolving that we have. I think we were the first or the second one. And in figures, I think ConsoFrey has done close to, what's that, 30 million so far, close to 500 assets have been placed. And we are growing and growing, which is fantastic. And this was possible through all the help and support from Centrifuge, right? And what we saw out of it, say, yeah, this is fantastic opportunity, right? But if you want to scale this even further and help as well Centrifuge, right, to just grow not just the TVL, but the ecosystem and bringing more asset originators into play, we need to do our part as well. And that's how the idea of DeFactor was created, right? Say, what can we do just to help ease up a little bit that operational burden from the DeFi space, because it's not easy sometimes, like especially you're coming from the traditional space, just dealing with the concept of wallets and permissionless operations is a big shift in the mindset, right? And that's basically what DeFactor is trying to do, right? Is helping traditional companies that don't have the knowledge, that they don't have probably the capability, and they don't have the resource to bring expertise from the DeFi space and help them in that journey, right? For them to just tap as well into the liquidity that can allow them, one, to prove their business models, or expand, right, the volumes and the financial services that they are providing at the moment.
All right, thank you very much. I'm also very excited to announce that DeFactor will be the first pool that's going to go live on Pools on Centchain, which will be like the new app that is built on the Centrifuge chain, which is part of the Polkadot ecosystem. So we're very happy to have a long, stable partner on our side who's going on another journey with a new product. So here's my question for you, Alejandro. What are you excited about Pools on Centchain, and how do you think it will impact your day-to-day work?
Yeah, we're extremely happy, and it's super exciting for us, for our team. The team is really vibrant about this news. As you mentioned, well, we have been partnering for some time, and just taking this into the next level is extremely important for us and for the ecosystem and the community. Look, I believe that there are a lot of potential on it. And clearly this is the next iteration from the product perspective in the centrifuge. So I think it's miles ahead compared to from what we're studying in the beginning, now what we have in Team Lake, and this iteration in the same chain is even better. It's even more user friendly, right? And that's going to stop the work not only for us but also for the other asset originators that are already working with. And I think that's the right path, right? We want to just look for that scalability and adoption, but we need to make things easier for everybody to come and test. And I clearly believe that that's what is happening in Same Chain. And this is just the first stage, right? So I'm really looking forward to see what is next from the financial structuring, having a little bit more flexibility there. That is always important for different business proposition and different business models, right?
And we also got a question from one of our ambassadors. He or they were asking, looking back at your experience with console freight, did you face any issues? For example, a lack of liquidity, a default case? How should a future asset originator or business solve or face these issues? Do you like have any input, any advice, any suggestions for future asset originators on the Centrifuge platform, how they can use your basically your experience? And
yeah, well, look, yeah, we faced a lack of liquidity. Yeah, that's the main component. As you guys know, trying to convince especially traditional investors to move into the DeFi space is a task that can take some time. But we have managed to do that, and the guys from Centrifuge have been fantastic at that task. One of the things is the fact that as the liquidity is not locked on those pools, right? That means that there must be some variability, right, from the volumes that you have in your pool, meaning that your planning needs to be done pretty well, and the way that you are structuring deals as well. Why? Because either you're going to be running low in funds or you're going to have a big cash drag. So it's just juggling those two balls. It's kind of a balance between those two components. Then from what we're saying is, so like as I explained, is that cultural change, right, on how things are working in the traditional space, how things are working in the DeFi space. You need to just have probably more checks than ever, because there is not that kind of how to say safety net that you have with the traditional financial space, and that's really important to mention and for everyone to have clear. And in a way, that's kind of what we are trying to help in DeFactor, right? It's kind of providing all that expertise and all that journey, right, that we have been part of for the last 2.5 years, and helping just the smaller players to just tap into it and be part of this.
nice. I'm asking Christian, do we still have time for one more question, or should we move on?
We sure have time for questions. There are 2 more questions in the forum. I don't know if you want to ask them, or I can read them out as well, as you wish.
I have maybe you can read out. Maybe I'm missing the latest one.
Yeah, it's actually from the same ambassador, from the same moderator. Just a basic question. What's your advice to a small business which would like to launch a pool on Tin Lake Centrifuge chain? Any special advice or suggestions? Maybe some what you learned and from the mistake probably, or maybe you made.
Look, I think is to have a structured product. I think that's really important. To have a solid risk mitigation underwriting. I think that will help dramatically, right? One, to convince the community that the money that is placed in safe hands, and on the other side, for the liquidity providers of investors to be confident that the funds are going to, or that you are able to mitigate the risk, right, when they are placing funds. Then when you have those two components covered, in a way, it's kind of the first stage, and is that solid foundation. From that point onwards, is well, you need your marketing component. You need to as well have some understanding of the tech that is behind, right? The DeFi, so as I mentioned, is different from a traditional. So I think it's a combination of that, having a real solid product in the real world space, and combining that with the technology that DeFi is providing in order to use cover, for example, communities that are not covered at the moment, and provide traditional innovative financial services.
We also have 3 more questions. Like one is like, what kind of assets do you currently tokenize, and under which regulation are you?
And what? Sorry, Anna. What was the second part?
And the second part was, under which regulation are you?
Yeah, so the assets that we are working with are supply chain finance assets. So that's inventory finance, trade finance, and factoring. There is no regulation for that type of assets or the financial services. They're unregulated in mainly every single part of the world. And that's kind of the main reasons that we have started with these ones. One, because traditional investors know them really well. They are really familiarized with that, so meaning that we can just bring them into the party. But also, as I say, like, a regulation is really low, right? Because what you are doing is purchasing assets, and there is no real regulation for that type of service.
And then we also had another question from Fabienne, who's also an asset originator on TinLake. He also has 2 pools. He's asking, how are you planning on promoting and securing funding? Are you going for a broker-dealer license? And how are you creating security interest against those assets? You can also find these questions in the comments in case.
Yeah, so one is that, yeah, we have a big plan not to be solely reliant on the hard work that Centrifuge is doing for the investors. We're bringing our own team that is going to be helping providing that liquidity for all the asset originators that are going to be part of this pool. And how are we going to be convincing them? Well, with the internal process that we're going to, or that we are setting up. As I say, like, we are not going to be just checking every single one of the underlying assets that are going to be pushed through. We're going to be doing extreme due diligence actually on the asset originators and helping them just to improve whatever they have at the moment if it's not 100%, right? So that's kind of a badge of accreditation in a way, and that's the way of, how to say it, kind of how we are structuring that whatever we are presenting to the liquidity providers or investors is good enough for them to be one, convinced that the companies that are coming on board are doing the correct things and they have all the procedures in place, but also that there is a risk mitigation from the covenants in the pools as well. That is a key component for investors.
Okay, I mean, I think we went pretty deep down the rabbit hole here right now.
Yeah, we could continue the whole hour, I guess.
I think so as well.
Because it's quite complex. Maybe one more question, or one or 2 more questions. It's about how big do you mean should be the threshold for a business to start to launch a pool on TinLake? Because we have questions in Discord from community members, individual investors. They are asking to finance some apartment, for example, and obviously this is not suitable for pools on Centrifuge chain.
Maybe I think it depends. Sorry, Kate.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear what you think, and also Anna, if you have any thoughts on this too.
Yeah, look, I think it will depend actually on the asset class in a way. From my perspective, is what is going to be determining the size of those pools. But if you are managing, let's say, like a pool or commingled pool, well, the advantage that we have is that volume doesn't need to be 10, 20 million, right? It can be way less than that, and that's kind of the advantages of having these sort of projects like DeFactor or like Fabian as well, right? The idea is at some point just to have a structure that is automated as much as possible and is so efficient that you can just onboard companies in need of 500,000 or less, right? And that's aspirational, but let's see.
Awesome answer. Yeah, if there are, do you have from the community any more questions to Alejandro and Ernesto from DeFactor?
I have one thing to add to the last question. Currently, the BizDev team is also working like on a criteria list of like what kind of businesses actually make sense that could be launched on Tindeq, which and on Centrifuge chain pools on Centrifuge chain, it's in the forum. So it's called the pool onboarding process, and there you find like the steps and also the criteria if you want to know more.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Maybe Ivan or someone else can post the link to the POP from the forum in the chat. Yeah, thanks Anna for introducing Ernesto and Alejandro and DeFactor. Really looking forward because in my opinion it shows when a former asset originator launches another pool and Centrifuge chain, it shows that there is trust in the protocol, and of course it's important for investors as well that there are new pools and you can choose where you put your money, your eggs, and that's quite positive. I'm looking forward to the pools launching on Centrifuge chain hopefully as soon as possible, but we are looking forward, everyone here in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here, guys. And look, more than happy just to keep the conversation open. And well, we have been in the community calls before, and I hope that this is not the last one. And yeah, just let us know if you have any questions, if you want to be part of this. More than happy to just have a chat.
Just one more question. When investors have any questions, how can they reach you?
So
what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, they can reach me at alejandro@defactor.com. That's the simplest one that we can do. Or well, you can just go through our LinkedIn or our info@defactor.com as well.
Also in the forum, right?
Also the forum. Yes, we are in the forum as well. We're in the Discord as well. So
perfect. So good to know if anyone has any questions. Okay, then thanks a lot. Hope to see you soon in one of the next community calls. And yeah, if there are no more questions to DeFactor, then I guess we can continue with the celebration with Cassidy, with a short summary of what happened with Centrifuge. Short summary of the past.
I like this, calling it a celebration for sure.
Yeah, it's a jubilee, and we will celebrate after community call 100.
Wow. Yeah, we're only at 25 now, right? So I'm going to start with a little bit more of looking backwards, even though I think this conversation with DeFactor is quite exciting looking forwards. So then Lucas is going to jump in after me and do a little bit more looking forward on what we can expect I put a few slides together, nothing super crazy, but I'll go ahead and share that. But also happy to make this more of a discussion around, yeah, just some of our exciting wins at Centrifuge. I think, I guess, oops, here we go. I would say Console Freight and now DeFactor has really been with us from quite early on. And I think our biggest win in the very beginning was launching TinLake. So that's what these numbers are showing, are all of the numbers in our TinLake pools. And I think, I don't know how many of you on the call were with us back then when we launched TinLake, but it was quite exciting for us at the time because it was slightly different from where we had really originally started, just focusing on supply chain finance. TinLake really opened up a lot more possibilities to finance any sort of asset. And I think that was a really big, excuse me, really big proof point for us, I think, to show that this has actually worked. And I think for me, this is one of the most exciting wins. So reaching over 80 million TVL in TinLake is also a super huge accomplishment for us to really show that this is something that we've built that really works and has traction in the ecosystem. We've also got the integrations with Maker and Aave that have gone live, and this 44 million Maker debt ceiling is quite a big accomplishment as well. And I think Centrifuge has really paved the way for other projects now to come in and integrate with Maker. And I think all of the work that we've done has really shown other projects how to do it, and also ways that we can all together improve on this process. As of yesterday, I pulled these numbers. We have 209 unique liquidity providers, and that's one sec. I think that's a number that can fluctuate day to day, but quite exciting to see how many people are actually locking their DAI into TinLake. 12 different active pools, and over the lifetime of TinLake, 148 million in total value in the value of assets that have been financed. And currently right now, 251 active loans. So we've come quite a long way, I think, in terms of TinLake, its growth, from launching it to something that we didn't fully know how it was going to take off, to now surpassing 80 million in TVL, with 12 different pools, all different types of assets. I think we can all be really excited about what the next step is from here because of how far we've come so far. So I'm really glad we're taking some time to look back at all of the accomplishments that we've had. This is some data that's pulled from Token Terminal, and I would encourage anyone to go take a look at Token Terminal and all of the metrics that you can see on Centrifuge there, because you can really go quite in depth, I think, in terms of looking into how all of these different pools have grown, how Centrifuge has grown over time, and it's quite a nice resource, I would say. And then just a shout out to a lot of different projects and teams that we've worked with. I think we can be really excited looking back on all of the promising fintechs, institutions, and DeFi protocols that we've worked closely with and really built something, I think, really strong together by working together. So again, those integrations with Maker, the integration with Aave, building on Polkadot as one of the strongest projects in the entire crypto space, I would say, working together with teams like Fortunify, Bling, DeFactor, Console Freight, Branch, New Silver, and this new announcement we had yesterday about Block Tower, and also about MasterCard. We've got a lot of really great teams that we're working with. And I think that can also make us feel even more validated in the work that we're doing at Centrifuge, that we've got some of the best teams across all of fintechs and DeFi that are really interested in working together with us and pushing this space forward. So yeah, I mean, passing 80 million TVL and Tin Lake, and just looking at the Tin Lake DApp and how far it's come so far, we've really come a long way, I think, from the very beginning of launching it. And Tin Lake, I think, has grown quite impressively, also in terms of like the UI and how people use it, and all the feedback that we get from these great partners that I just mentioned is really helpful. And I think you'll be excited to see in the looking forward section how Pools on Centchain is going to take this forward as well. So just, you know, a couple of mentions on some of our other key past wins. Getting this Polkadot parachain slot was also a really big win for us. Not only getting this slot itself, but already 2 years ago, launching our standalone substrate chain was a huge development effort for us. Again, you know, definitely a big bet in terms of, you know, where we see adding efficiency, adding functionality to Centrifuge. We really said, hey, let's take this new technology of substrate and you know, create Centrifuge chain. And that has really, I think, brought us quite far in terms of creating something that's really built for our use case. And I think it gives us so much more potential when we are looking forward that we have this parachain on Polkadot. And then I think this conversation that we just had with DeFactor really shows that we're working with issuers who really share our vision. And it was great that we had you guys on the call, because I think you've really been there from the very beginning. And I think that's something that's also really worth celebrating, is that we have issuers who've really shared that vision and have worked with us from quite early on to build Centrifuge into what it is today. So from there, I'm actually going to pass to Lucas to look forward. I don't know, do you want me to continue sharing the slides here, or would you want to share? Let me know what you think there. Or maybe, let's see, do we have Lucas on the call actually?
I don't think so.
Yeah, maybe before we move on with Lucas, are there any questions from the viewers? Because it's obviously really awesome what happened the last 1.5 to 2 years. Maybe which integration? I have one question actually, because Polkadot, the parachain auctions, it's not that long ago that Centrifuge launched. Which integration, Cassidy, with, I know this question is a little bit difficult to answer, but which is the integration with another Polkadot parachain project you would highlight as the maybe the best combination?
I think that's actually something that we'll get to in the looking forward, since that's the future stuff that we're working on. So hold that question.
Or from the, I can hold this question, but from the past already.
I mean, so from the past, we've pretty much only worked really closely with the Parity team. Mm-hmm. We were part of their Substrate Builders program, and we launched Centrifuge already in 2020, end of April 2020, actually. And we really actually chose to make that decision on Substrate because of how supportive the Parity team is, that they had something like this builders program, and they were really interested in supporting teams building on Polkadot from the very beginning, even though parachains were still something that was a little bit further on the horizon. They really gave us a lot of technical support in building there. So I think that has been really key for us, is having their support and guidance in terms of really getting the most out of using Substrate. Yeah.
Yeah, cool stuff. I totally agree. We had Will from Parity already on several calls in the past, and he is really a good guy. And I can understand that this is a big integration, big collaboration. I personally like the in your presentation I'm a fan of token terminal, because when you showed the graph of Tin Lake pools evolving, as I said in the beginning, I started with Tin Lake in October 2020, and I don't know how big the TVL was, but it was much lower than it is right now, and you can see that a lot of things happen in Tin Lake pools, and yeah, looking forward. So again, I'm looking forward to reach 100 million TVL hopefully soon.
I could
I'm ready.
propose one question.
Oh, go ahead.
There's one question. Nice.
Yeah. What contributed to most of the success getting to this 83 million? And what were some of the frictions that maybe contributed to not being higher, if there are any that we can identify?
Maybe I would start with the friction. I would say it is a very new process that we've created here. And I would say the biggest friction is needing to understand what's a process that we can use for launching pools that we can iterate on, that any issuer that comes to Centrifuge can really be set up with all the tools that they need to launch a pool. And so we've come so far to now having the POP process that's gone live. And I think Lucas is going to mention that as well, on how we're looking forward there. But I think that's been a long time coming for us, is coming up with this process that we can really iterate on and use it to scale, to allow as many issuers that want to launch a pool to really do that. Because I think so far there's been this bottleneck of just resources that teams have to understand how to launch a pool and how to get onboarded onto Centrifuge. So really removing that bottleneck, I think, will allow us to grow much faster from here. I don't know, Lucas, if you want to jump in there, or anyone else on the team, on your thoughts.
He was here and then he dropped off, so.
Maybe he has connection problems, but I saw him in the chat as well. Maybe one more. I guess we have time for one more question from Ivan, one of our ambassadors. Why just a quick answer, or more elaborated answer as you wish. Why did you choose 2 years ago to build on Polkadot Centrifuge and not on another blockchain like, I don't know, Atom or Near protocol? Why Polkadot?
So Polkadot was really the only viable solution at the time. You have to remember, this was back in 2019 that we made this decision, and there really was nothing else, at least nothing else that was really usable. So Cosmos was around, but they really didn't have almost any support at all for teams that wanted to use the Cosmos SDK. There also weren't a lot of other teams that we could have collaborated with on, how they're building using that ecosystem. Whereas with the Polkadot ecosystem, we weren't the only team that was building in that ecosystem. And again, like I mentioned before, the Parity team was super supportive. They have this builders program. They had a lot of documentation and just a lot of hands-on work together with our team to help us really build using Substrate. So I think that was really the key for us in the end, as well as I think just how technically sound Polkadot is as a project, Substrate is as a tool. I think it's a lot more advanced than a lot of the alternatives, even now today. If we were to make this decision again, I think we'd probably make the same decision, just due to how advanced that ecosystem is and the tooling that's available there.
Nice one. thanks for the answer, and thanks for the question, of course, Ivan. Yeah, maybe hopefully Lucas can give a little bit of an outlook about the future collaborations with other parachains on Polkadot.
Yeah.
Yes,
Lucas, how do you want to jump into this? Should I share the slides for you?
that would be helpful.
Okay. All right. I'll
Thank
do
you.
that.
Cool. Yeah. First of all, I just want to say hi. So I couldn't make it earlier because we're in Palm Beach at Permissionless, which I think was actually super interesting to see because it's a con. I'm not sure if it's a nice venue. Personally, for me, it's way too hot. But what I liked about being here is actually Permissionless was organized by Blockworks and Bankless. Bankless has been a super good resource for onboarding like people into DeFi, and I think a lot of finance people, a lot of like new users actually like started to learn about DeFi, understand it through Bankless, and quite a bit of that audience is actually coming from like traditional finance, like out of this world, like, and so the audience here actually like what a lot of the conversations was about was like people are starting to see what this vision is that we've had for Centrifuge for a long time, which is that we believe actually DeFi can be a fundamentally better financial system that creates a fairer conditions for people to borrow money, to lend money, and like if you think about that, like it sounds kind of boring, not that inspiring, but like the reality is, right, like money, it does make a huge difference to people live, like it affects every part of our life. It's kind of like what we use to transact with each other. And so when you think of like access to finance as like a right or like a need, right, like the better access you have, the better you can actually kind of fulfill your dreams, like realize your like business idea, like go to school, buy a house, whatever, right? And so like DeFi as a technology is like has the ability, if we do it right, to remove a lot of the advantages that these very large financial institutions have, because they have hundreds or thousands of lawyers and salespeople and like people that are just making sure that the interests of these banks are being represented and stand at the first place, right, and not at the last place. And the idea of like open, transparent networks with like and DeFi protocols is that it's actually the opposite way. Like we shouldn't be building Centrifuge into something that will stay in people's way of realizing what they want to do. And that vision, right, for DeFi is, I think, quite a powerful one, and that's why we were here basically to share this with people and sort of educating these new users in crypto, or interested, curious people, about how like actually that future can look, right? And I think it's in the same way that like the internet has made a lot of like with the internet, like I can talk to someone on the other side of the world and like have a working relationship by just like finding a freelancer somewhere to teach me a new language, or like pay for some services that I buy online on Etsy, right? And like I think in the same way, like DeFi is going to have a big impact, and that's like here at Permissionless was kind of like the focus, and being close to being a crypto conference though that's like accessible to new users and mostly focused around finance, I think made it actually a great place to kind of like push that narrative forward. Actually, Cassie, I'm not sure if you want to move on to the next slide. I actually think this was, so this was maybe right, like to summarize, bring a bit of context to what I'm going to be talking about, right? Like that's why I'm here in Miami. That's sort of like what we're working on with like like the partners we have that are live today, and the new partners that are coming live. Partners, I mean like issuers, investors, users of the protocol, right? And really, I believe like this idea that we can build like a better financial system is what we really want to focus on when we're kind of like thinking about where Centrifuge is going. Yeah, like maybe this graphic, like I want to revisit a bit. We talked about this before. We shared a bit of a blog post of. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we talked about this before, kind of looking at what Centrifuge is going to do from a technical perspective. I think there are these 4 themes: scale, pools, and Centrifuge, right? So actually like retiring what today is tin lake, that's kind of like expensive and not as flexible as what the pools and Centrifuge chain are going to be. We want to obviously like bringing liquidity to borrowers, but whether that's like institutional investors starting to use DeFi, directly investing in pools, or the index token idea, and just integrating into more DeFi protocols, building trust in assets. Building trust in assets. What I'm kind of like, what we're referring here is real world assets are hard, right? Like it's actually, there's thousands or millions of different kinds of assets, right? Like real estate is a massive asset class, and in there's hundreds of specializations and more, right? In every single country, every market. And so like it's a hard topic, right? Like you're not just talking about ETH and Bitcoin and maybe some other like liquid assets, but you're talking about these things, and what we need to do as Centrifuge is build the understanding for that and the tools for like the community to actually understand them, know whether they're good, they're priced the right way, they're safe, and so like start building that expertise in the DAO, not just in individual users, right? And so like other like DeFi protocols have risk teams and setting parameters, right? Like Gauntlet, for example, is doing a lot of work on like assessing the risk of crypto native assets, and so the work, for example, we do in the credit group is something where we like try to bring more of that knowledge of like the traditional like world, the real world assets into DeFi. And then ultimately, like the 4th big bullet is like we're starting to get to a point where actually like the product is becoming useful enough that there can actually that CFG holders can start to see like can start to think about ways that actually like we start to couple this to utility in CFG, right? So like ways that actually like issuers who are using the protocol will pay transaction fees to the treasury, so that can in the future fund development of the protocol, that it can go to token holders, and sort of like new ways of staking CFG to actually indicate whether you support a certain pool and want to like actually sort of like create a backstop, or whether you're like how you kind of like think about these different pools, vote with the tokens, and so on. So that's like a quick recap on the roadmap. I'm happy to talk about this a bit more, but sort of seeing also what time it is. We have I think 8 minutes left. Maybe we can like dive into a few things in particular, like maybe Cassidy, if you want to move on. I think, yeah. So the one first topic, and I kind of like for us when I talked about the roadmap before, falls into obviously more liquidity for borrowers, like XCM and like cross-chain messaging in Polkadot is how like different parachains interact with each other. And just in general, like cross-chain DeFi, I think is like we are at a point where like Ethereum still has a lot of TVL, but there's many other protocols and layer 1s, layer 2s that also have a lot of users, maybe different use cases. And what we think is going to happen is actually that lenders, so like the investors in pools, are going to be more and more come from other chains, right? And it's not our goal actually to try to like become the only chain where Centrifuge assets are going to be on. Like we're in fact, actually, we want the opposite. We want Centrifuge assets to go onto every chain so that investors and users in those ecosystems can get exposure to real world assets. And so we're doing that with a combination of both XCM within Polkadot and Kusama, and then bridging into other layer ones and ecosystems, mostly EVM focused, so that like issuers can create those pools on Centrifuge, but then like really get liquidity from like all these other ecosystems. That's like a big kind of like, I think, change also in how like DeFi works, right? Today, like a lot of the activity is not really cross-chain. Aave, for example, is deployed as a separate market on every layer 1 or layer 2 that they're on. So they're all like always splitting it. And the way we think about this is like Centrifuge is actually we're not splitting our user base, we're not splitting our like governance topics, we're not splitting our liquidity, but we're creating like sort of ways into the pools from other networks. And that's going to be super exciting when we start to see that. And then maybe moving on to the next slide. Of course, like what has to happen first is we actually need to launch pools. And this is not a mock-up, actually, like the almost final design of what the dApp is going to look like. So this is going to replace what you see on tinlake.centrifuge.io today, where like you will be able to interact directly with Centrifuge chain. It's going to be much cleaner, more capabilities for like both kind of like issuers, but also investors. And that's like for sophisticated investors that really want to drill down on the portfolio and like see what's going on with different assets, but also for like just users who are trying to like understand at a very high level, like what's going on, like where they can like find in pools that they're interested in. And then like sort of looking a bit forward and also sharing some of the stuff that's going on outside of just the product. Yesterday we shared the partnership with Block Tower. This is a really exciting deal because Block Tower has been in crypto for a very long time, but at the same time always had a good relationship and sort of like good connection to the institutional, like traditional world. And like what we want to do with Block Tower actually is sort of start to use them as a way to enter some of those new institutional investors and enter those markets, work with them on getting feedback on the product, like having them actually start using it and sort of like maybe start building a pool or become investors in pools, right? Beyond just like sort of a VC investment, which is what the other part of the deal was. And that was like an interesting, it's a great partner to have. They're also like very actively working with us on like sort of thinking of how to put Centrifuge into like other DeFi protocols, and you'll see some of their people like more actively talking about Centrifuge and also on the forums maybe and in our community and in other DeFi protocols. The other big topic is just growing the DAO, right? Like we're like Centrifuge, there's probably around 45 full-time equivalents, so not employees, but just like people working across the original core team, like some new like teams that are forming up, like DCM that Mike is leading. But really, like we need to start thinking of not just that, but also like the DAO itself and how we start having the DAO can do more and more on their own and support like people within, right? And one of the first steps is actually community governed pool onboarding. I think is an important process is like, how do we launch a pool? How do we find out if actually a pool is going to work? If there's demand by investors, if the supply matches the demand, right? And that's like the POP basically, which is a transparent sort of public process, and then a credit group, is actually sort of an important element in that. I talked about how we're trying to educate people in DeFi about real world assets, and on the flip side, like bring real world asset like underwriters, sort of like risk assessors, like people that know about this stuff into Centrifuge as a way to help the community understand if a pool is risky or not, or what the risks are in a pool, so that when you make like a decision of whether you want to onboard a pool, for example, right, that you can sort of make that decision with the right information. I forgot to add the forum link there, but you should check out also the credit group proposal, which is live on the forum and being discussed. I think we already sort of had like the first poll, and I think there's been talk about putting forward a council motion that hopefully will happen in the coming days. Yeah, that was a lot. Would love to also be able to answer some questions. I know we're at time, but I can go a bit over. So happy to start also discussing a bit and getting feedback.
Yeah, great presentation, and of course the past summary, or to review a little bit of the past, what happened from Cassidy as well. Maybe about the cross-chain integration, because you mentioned it in the forum and in the presentation a little bit as well. What's your outlook on Akala, on the USD? Because we had the issue with UST, and a lot of investors lost a lot of money. Can this happen with Akala USD or with DAI in general as well?
So there's a big difference between Akala USD and UST. The difference is that the collateral, the value of the collateral in Luna is, well, the collateral in UST is Luna, and Luna is like, the value of Luna is tightly coupled to the value of UST, because if UST is not successful, then Luna is not successful, and when like people start to try to liquidate UST, then there has to be someone that wants to buy Luna on the other side. Now, if the both of them are actually, so what happens, or what did happen, was that like at some point people lost trust in both of these assets, and because they're so tightly separated, it created like this crazy reinforcing loop, and that was like, I know a lot of people thought this was safe and wanted to use it and were quite excited about it. I think that was definitely a lot of market euphoria, but you can find countless scientists, DeFi experts talking about how like the idea of backing a stable coin with the equity of the stablecoin project is a very, very bad idea. And the collateral that's backing Akala or DAI is not related to Akala or DAI. It's like, it's still correlated, unfortunately, right? So like ETH and Maker, like they're still kind of like, whenever they're fluctuating, they are like, both of them usually are, and that's why like real world assets are really important in Maker. But like if you need to reduce this DAI demand, you can do that by liquidating ETH, which is not going to crash the price of ETH, which will like even make it worse, right? So like that is like very high level the fundamental difference between those two, and those two meaning like algorithmic stablecoins and collateral backed, generally over collateralized stablecoins. So I'm much less worried. I think both Akala and DAI are much safer. We also had DAI like briefly lose its peg on Black Thursday in 2020, and so it can happen, of course, as well, that it goes slightly off peg, but it won't happen that like everything will go to zero, because like there's this like bank run. I think that is like a key difference. So yeah, I'd say we're very happy to work with both Akala and Maker, and use their stable coins as ways to invest and also borrow from them.
Yeah, thanks for the short explanation. We could make a whole stream on the topic. Maybe one of the next community calls we will go a little bit deeper. But this is something why real world assets are really big and important, that they secure more or less that DAI is backed then by real world assets, more or less, and that's something many investors should have on their mind when it comes to investing.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks. We are already a few minutes late, but maybe a few more or important questions if someone has a question to Lucas. Otherwise, yeah, there's one more question from Ron to close the call. Maybe short answer.
Just answered on the
Christian, I
chat.
didn't want to interrupt, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I also had sent a question over to you. I know it's
I didn't see that yet.
crowded. Oh, not to you, Lucas.
Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt your thought.
Just go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, can we talk about the eventual tokenomics to the best of our knowledge, both for CFG and Altair for the air token? Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, I think CFG and Altair are like CFG and Air or Centrifuge and Altair. I think the way to think about them is they're technically very similar with different use cases, and there will be slight technical differences that will make it better for, say, like Altair more focusing on crypto collectibles and Centrifuge really focus on real world assets. But in the end, like when I talked about token utility, if you think of Centrifuge as a marketplace, right? Like the protocol is allowing people to interact with each other, funding pools and borrowing from pools, and the goal there, like that is like there's a cost of doing that transaction in the real world. That cost is actually quite insane. Like securitization generally has, like at the very, very lowest end, maybe like 50 basis points, so 0.5%. At the high end, it costs up to 2% a year. And just like, say you have $100 million in like different assets and you want to sell it to like 1,000 investors, and you have your pool of like $100 million in loans with different investors, right? So like say you make you charge 10% of interest a year, you're paying 2% to like service providers like lawyers, fund administration, trustees, like collateral agents, payment agents. There's like probably like a dozen service providers like that. A lot of them are just not really needed anymore with crypto, because with smart contracts, you can actually like develop, like encode a lot of that in the smart contract, in the logic of the pools, right? And so that's real. Then that is value that Centrifuge is creating, where like now if you use Centrifuge, like today we're still early, and so like the market is not mature enough that we can just go out there and say, oh, like come use it. So we're still like trying to prove out this technology, but at some point, like actually that will be like a big benefit of using Centrifuge, is that you can a borrower, like an issuer, will look at it and say, oh, like actually, like I don't need this collateral agent. I don't like my legal fees are going to be a fraction. My fund admin, I don't need to pay anymore, because like actually Centrifuge is my fund administration. And then like that then also means that like transaction fees on Centrifuge actually can start to become like more significant. And really what we're thinking of is that it's kind of like a spread on the interest rate to like pay for like providing the service, right? And token holders that govern the protocol, develop the protocol, like should see some utility from that. That's the one aspect, which is just simply fees. Maker has a very Maker is a very comparable business model. They have expenses on one side and serviceability fees coming in on the other side, and then like sort of the what's left is burned. And I think that's like a very elegant token model. The other aspects are like other utilities, like using it to stake against pools that you would like to see, to be basically able to put up some sort of collateral, meaning CFG, to say, okay, I believe this is a good pool to add, and I want to start earning some of these fees. Like that's another thing we talked. We started discussing. I think Cassidy published a blog post, not a blog, sorry, forum post, like inviting comments, and we'd like to start sort of getting feedback on it from the community.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Lucas, for this detailed answer to the question. Do you want to say anything before we close the call? Because we are already 10 minutes late. I would love to see the conversation to continue in the forum, because it's a really, really important topic.
Yep. Yeah, we'll actually share a lot of these token model topics quite early on to get community feedback and start like developing this really like on the forum in discussions and doing calls as soon as we're like sort of have like a certain topic to talk about. So like definitely keep looking there and see what's going on. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks to everyone, to the presentations, to Lucas, to Cassidy, to everyone who joined, the partners at DeFactor, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon, latest next month, or in the next governance call, which will be earlier than this one.
2nd of June.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Stopping the recording now.
Bye, everyone.